Welcome back, my friends, and thank you for joining us here for episode 10. We read American Gods by Neil Gaimann. What an interesting take on ancient gods, and not just the familiar ones. Neil takes us on a journey across America to discover lesser-known entities and what conflicts can arise when powers wane. Is there a right side or a wrong one? Let's find out.
Welcome in, everybody. Welcome into the Mess Hall Hangout. Welcome to our monthly book club.
Buddy!
There goes the ads.
Yeah, cool. Right on time.
Right on time.
That's fucking hilarious. What a troll.
It heard us talking and is like, ads!
Thank
It
you.
waited.
It waited the whole time. Let's let that finish up and we'll get into it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Thanks, Twitch.
Thanks to
Wait, does Annie's little character move?
Yeah, when I talk.
Yeah, it has ever since we started.
And my
Never
mouth
noticed
opens.
before.
Yeah, that's her little like PNG avatar that she gave me to use.
Yeah.
That is
I
very
actually have a whole little thing of her for when I want to start streaming. So when I
Interesting.
am going to start streaming, I'm gonna be a PNG tuber.
You hear that, chat? You hear that? We have future Twitch superstar here, Annie on Film, and her PNG tuber. All right, welcome in, everybody. This, like I said, this is our Mess Hall Hangout monthly book club. This month's book was American Gods by Neil Gaimann. I don't know how is that. Is that how you
It's
say it?
Gaiman, isn't it Gaiman?
I think it's
I think
Gaiman.
it's Gaiman.
Gaiman? Okay, Neil Gaiman. I don't know.
He got teased in high school.
Oh.
Yeah.
he probably did. Okay, that's fair. Annie, do you want to jump us in and get us started with
Welcome.
introductions?
Yeah, welcome to episode 10. As Ginger says, American Gods by Neil Gaiman. You can see it over there, or Aaron has the book. So we've got Squandy, me, Kiki, and Gendrid as usual. This book, was this my choice? I think. Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. It was my book choice. So finally, after 10 episodes, my choice gets chosen. And I also want to preface, like, this book is also a show. Was it an HBO show? One of them.
Stars.
Yeah,
I think
the
it's on
show,
Stars.
yeah. Sorry.
Stars. Yeah. So I have, yeah.
I
I
learned
could have
that
swore it was HBO.
actually.
It might have been
It's-
HBO, but when I was looking up stuff online, it was like Stars, American Gods. I was like, okay.
Subscribe. So it was on one of those the streaming services because it's a grittier TV show. Which as we get into the book, we'll find out. But it was a TV show I have not seen. I don't think anybody else has seen either, which is good.
Oh,
and
Satan,
I
I knew-
also think
Oh, Satan, I knew. Oh,
I also
Fickle.
think this is a book that none of us have read before. Where usually there's one person in the group who's like, I put this book on because it's my favorite book and I read it a million times, which is great. So this was a good,
Hey there,
like,
mister.
fresh
Hey there,
book
mister.
for us, I think.
Hi, user. Welcome in.
So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm not gonna read the whole summary because as I was writing the summary, I was like, this is gonna take like 30 minutes to read, and that's not fun. So I have this outline. And to be honest, I didn't really understand what the concept or like where it was gonna go with like American gods, because I'm like, oh, what does that even mean? What are the American gods? Are there American gods? So we start out with our main character, Shadow. Gets employed by this mysterious man named Mr. Wednesday. And I think some people figured out who he was faster than me. I didn't figure it out until when it was revealed, really. We learn the gods old and new live among us. There's a war brewing between both sides, thinking that they're better than each other. Wednesday needs Shadow to help convince the old gods to fight against the new gods. A lot of the old gods don't want to, and they take a lot of convincing. So this book is mostly about the journey with Shadow and Mr. Wednesday convincing these old gods to fight against the new ones. During the meetings, and it's pretty much just like a giant road trip, Shadow has a lot of downtime in between when he's called to assist Mr. Wednesday. So he is essentially living in this little Wisconsin town called Lakeside. He finds out about mysterious disappearances of children every winter in this town. And also every year, every winter, they have a raffle contest where they tow a clunker car out onto the ice, and the whole town bets when it's gonna fall through the ice when it melts in spring. Shadow also during this time learns about the old and the new gods, what it means to be a god in America. He also ends up working at a funeral parlor with some old gods. And right, I'm just giving you a skeleton's view of like what we read, so we can get into it after. Shadow turns out to be Wednesday's son, and Wednesday is Odin. There's peace talks where Wednesday goes to talk with the new gods, and it's broadcast on live TV, and he's murdered, which sparks the old gods to want to avenge his death, and so now they want to fight against the new gods that are taking over, but not really. The fight commences, and we find out that this whole thing with Shadow has been an elaborate long con, which to me, I was like, oh, that's kind of a slap in the face. The whole book is like, not fake, but like, you know, just a setup. The whole book is a setup. The fight commences. We find out it's a long con by Wednesday and Loki to ignite their much needed blood sacrifice, because in order for the old gods, most of them, to survive in the new world, they require blood sacrifices. And as the longer people have been in America, their belief fades and it wanes. So less sacrifices are being made, therefore Odin's power is waning. It's not existent. So the idea behind getting each side to fight each other is for a blood sacrifice to kind of reignite and revive Wednesday or Odin. But this is found out by Shadow, who had to die, but he was resurrected. So in some aspects, I was like, "Oh, is Shadow Jesus?" But he's not.
Well, I think
could be.
we should talk about that.
Could he be Jesus? Okay, I just have a
Give
few more
the
points,
summary before
and
we
then
start
we'll
getting into questions.
and then we'll get into
Hold
it.
on.
So Shadow. So Odin gets murdered. Shadow has to sit vigil for Odin, which is 9 days hanging to the world tree. And in that time, Shadow dies. Shadow gets resurrected. Shadow travels to where the fight is being held between the two sides. He walks onto the battlefield and gives this speech of like, we're all being tricked. This is all a ruse. And so he tells them the truth, and all the gods are kind of like, what the hell? And then they all kind of leave. They stop fighting and then they leave. Shadow then returns to Lakeside and inspects the trunk of the clunker to find a missing teen's body. Now, the reason is during the whole book, Shadow has dreams, and in each dream, different gods come and speak to him, and one of them tells him it's in the trunk. And he didn't know what that meant until he returns to the town and finds out that the old man of the town who puts on this raffle for the clunker is actually a dark god who has been sacrificing children every year in the clunker to keep the town prosperous. So Shadow finds the body in the trunk of the car. There's a cop who murders the old man, dark god character. And the mystery of Lakeside's disappearing children is revealed. Then Shadow ends up going to Iceland and speaks to an older version of his father, an older incarnation of his father, is what we're told. And that is just scratching the surface of basically what this book is. Did everybody enjoy it, or were there frustrations like the last book?
I enjoyed it for the most part. It's not perfect, and there are parts that I have major problems with, but it was good. I liked it. Yeah.
I enjoyed it for the most part, yeah.
I definitely had less frustrations, but I don't know. Like, it was a book that really made me like think, and when they started describing the new gods, I was like, oh, like, yes, because we get to meet Media. I loved meeting Media and how she would pop in, like Shadow was watching TV, and all of a sudden, like, Lucille Ball is speaking to him. Which I thought was like, that's such an interesting way to introduce these like new gods. And like Technical Boy was super annoying. But my favorite part was when they're at the motel to retrieve Wednesday's body, and because there's no internet, there's nothing, and he's Technical Boy, he needs the internet for company. He finds so much comfort in all of that, and he is going absolutely insane because he's finally like alone. He doesn't have his internet friends, so to speak, like to keep him company. I thought that was great because I'm like, I can resonate with that for sure.
So, I think Technical Boy is like essentially the god of technology. Like, not saying
Right.
he's beyond that, but the lack of Wi-Fi like there's no technology at the hotel. And it's interesting because the hotel is actually like, they all allude to, the hotel is like neutral ground for all the gods. None of them had any power there. None of the other ones are like freaking the fuck out either. Like, it obviously shows, it's like it alludes to Technical Boy's immaturity, both as a character and as a god. And it's like, I thought that was a really interesting analogy, comparing that to say, like, you know, you take some kid who's always on his phone camping, and all of a sudden he can't be on his phone when you're camping because there's no coverage.
He has a major meltdown.
Yeah, they have a meltdown. Take away some little kid's iPad, and it's the only thing they've ever known. They're gonna fucking lose it.
Yeah, like he's banging his head against the wall, and like Chernobog is like, shut up, and
I,
like that poor kid, but still.
I really liked all the old gods. Like I liked Media as a character, but I liked all the old gods. I liked Chernobog. I liked the three sisters. Like there's a whole lot there that was more interesting to me in terms of like there's all this history behind them.
I also liked in the book where we had those excerpts from Coming to America is what it was said, and like learning about like the two slave children who came over and like what they brought with them in their beliefs, and the woman who was like sentenced to like be on a boat for forever, but then ended up like living in America, and then she would make like those I don't want to say sacrifices, but like sacrifices to the pixies to keep her safe and stuff, and how
So those were little short stories that Neil would write about how the old gods got to America, where they were under praised, or people didn't believe them as much, but they were short stories about how the certain old gods got to America. And I guess he wrote them when he had writer's block about what was going to happen with the main story.
that's really
why they're kind of
interesting.
interspersed as interludes.
It's so great too, because it's like the old gods were their strongest when the immigrants who brought them over came over, obviously, because it's their like first belief, like you want to get like first generation kind of thing, and then each generation it fades and it fades, and we're at this point in the book where it's like Odin feels like he has to do something to feel alive again, and so that's why they are trying to spark a fight, a battle, because he wants to feel alive again, because nobody believes in him the way that they used to. Nobody's making, obviously, blood sacrifices in like 2020.
Well, yeah, that's the whole concept,
Yeah.
right? Is that belief creates these gods and gives them corporeal bodies, like tangible, bodies, and that's how the new gods exist. Is like we start to praise technology and media and all the new gods, right? And they become deified by the public. They exist because of us, which is pretty interesting. Like they don't exist without us. So the old gods fade. They need to they have a need to survive. But I think it's funny too that I really enjoyed the old gods as well, like Gendred, because for me it was because as they started to become less deified in America, they take up jobs like real people that are close to their, the Undertaker.
The Egyptian gods were the undertakers.
Anubis, Anubis is, and it's, so I thought that was really kind of cheeky. I thought it was fun.
Well, and the first chapter, the end of the first chapter is wild because it's Bellaquis, and she takes power from sexual worship. So she's a prostitute in this new world as an old god, but she devours she sexually devours people who will worship her.
Yeah,
so that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's fun how they just kind of take on modern world versions of what they would be. You know,
Mhm.
cute idea.
I also liked when they're on the battlefield and we were getting more descriptions of some other new gods where it was like drugs and stuff, and Shadow was like, I could tell, or yeah, I could tell it was some kind of drug, some kind of new drug, because they were like tweaking and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's duh. People do worship drugs. So I thought that was also really cool. But there's also like a constant at some point in the book there's a constant vision he has of the Buffalo Man. Which is what I'm kind of doing here. It's a buffalo skull.
Hey, mister. Hey, mister.
So I thought that was a good choice. So essentially the Buffalo Man mentors Shadow in a sense, because he's trying to convince Shadow. He tells Shadow believe everything, but he also is telling him like there's I don't know, somebody else can jump in, but like there's importance in the gods, but the land is more important. So he's trying to get Shadow to recognize that like these gods come and go, but the land is the constant, I guess.
I kind of took his believe everything too, maybe as like the importance of open-mindedness too, I think.
I don't know, I really liked the Buffalo Man character and the idea of like the backstage part where we get like an inside look of how, I don't know, the gods work. But I did think, I don't know what it was supposed to represent when we went backstage the first time behind Mount Rushmore, when it was like there was that spider, that like mechanical spider.
Oh,
I wasn't, yeah.
That was a reference to the 1997 Will Smith movie
Wild Wild West. Oh my god, that's what it reminded me of the whole time, and I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting spot because like we saw the spider was like sitting there like next to a pile of bones, and the spider was like looked like a piece of technology. It was very much had sensors and everything. It seemed to represent like some part of the new gods. But when Shadow like
that's what I
slid down
thought.
the hill and touched one of the bones, he could like see the thoughts and experience of one of like the quote unquote like Men in Black guys that work with the new gods. That part still has me sort of like confused because those guys didn't appear to be gods, right? They were more like well-known superstitions, and I think that's another part of this is like the systems that create and maintain these characters are beliefs. If enough people believe in Men in Black, then you have Men in Black, and they will exist in this universe. DeGrango, there is a spider character that is Mr. Nancy, but this is during the part where Odin and Shadow were on their way to meet up with.
They're behind Mount Rushmore.
They were on their way to meet up some like American Indian gods and some more other classic gods, but they were like being chased by some cops, and Odin scribbled like a whole bunch of stuff across the dash and like was able to like turn their Winnebago off the road and into sort of this like quote unquote the backstage where mortals can't really go and gods can. So it was interesting to me because we see at that point the Men in Black did not go backstage. They could have chased him, like if they were gods, right? But they didn't. That part, like, I was like, it's starting to blur the lines of like who's a god and who's not. Like what are the players in this game?
When I was reading some character descriptions of like Mr. Stone, Mr. Wood, and Mr. Town, they were all just described as like just tools. Just basic tools. I don't know if they mean like the god of tools or something, but it was just like these characters are tools, and I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense with like their
They're
names. Yeah, they're just thugs.
Well, and they're tools of the American gods, right?
Right.
They're not, people don't worship them in black. They might believe in them, right? Because, you know, like conspiracy theorists and such, but they don't worship them like they do technology or media or, you know, whatever, Pornhub. Like they like it's a different level of belief.
So, sorry, I'm going through these discussion questions.
Are we
I like
already on
this
the discussion questions?
Yeah. I like this first one. It makes me laugh because the gods use roadside attractions as ways to access their world. Like House on the Rock is actually close to me, and I've been told by people don't go there because it's just too kitschy. It's a tourist trap. But I think it's funny how it's like Wednesday is like, we have to go to this tourist trap and ride the carousel, and the carousel transports them to another world.
So Wednesday describes it interestingly in saying that these sort of like touristy trap things on the side of the road are they're like focal points of power, and people are drawn there for reasons they can't even understand. Like, and he described it as, oh yeah, well, this guy went there to go build this thing, but he won't even be able to really explain why he built it. You know, the world's largest ball of yarn or whatever. And this whole, do you need something? Okay. Love you. Good night. So we are at this point to where he's describing these points that it almost seems like these are points where the lines between worlds are a little bit thinner, where like the backstage is more easily accessed. It almost feels like.
It almost like it makes sense now. Like these places are very iconic to America.
Yeah,
these
the Gringo
tourist
says,
traps.
The roadside attractions are quintessential Americana from a bygone era.
Yes.
Which is apt for the old gods in America.
It's hilarious. And I do like, I get sucked in. I don't know, because I don't like being scared. I don't know if I would go into like a place that's like, oh, here's curios and curiosities.
There goes the chat.
Oh, there, mister.
Celestia just rated with
Oh, there,
43
mister.
odd ones. Just rated with 43
Hey
odd
there.
ones.
Oh my god.
Hey there.
Celestia Ray-
Holy shit.
Oh, look at
What is happening?
big
Awesome.
rating.
Give me 1 second to give a shout out. Also,
Hey
Andy,
there,
can
mister.
Can you give a
Hey
a
there,
shout out
mister.
to Celestia for me? Hi, folks. Welcome in, Zell. Hi, books. Yes, we're doing our monthly podcast on American Gods this month. That is the book that was chosen. We're just
Oh,
going through
there,
the book
mister.
and describing
Oh,
it.
there,
Thank you
mister.
for bringing in your community. Everybody, do me a favor. If you don't know Celestia, she is an amazing, wonderful ASMR, Skyrim, just comfy, cozy streamer. She plays all sorts of comfy, cozy games. But I really fell in love with her ASMR like voice and just hanging out in there. She's been one of my favorite streamers for a long time. So do me a favor, go drop her a follow. But I don't want to get too far off of the book club. But thank you for bringing in your people. Thank you, folks. If you need to go take a break, if you don't have time to hang out, please take care of yourselves, drink some water, take a break. If you want to hang out and listen to the podcast, we'd appreciate it, but don't feel like you have to.
If you've read American Gods, tell us.
Yeah, if you've read American Gods, please hang out and join in on the conversation in the chat. All right, sorry about that. Thank you again.
Roadside attractions, quintessential American,
Yeah.
kitschy thing.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know that I would go to too many of those things, but I have been to a couple, and they're interesting things, right? Like the whole, world's largest ball of yarn or whatever. Or like there are these things that are, oddities that exist because somebody felt the need to make them.
Is America the only type of country that does that type of thing?
That is a
I
great
haven't
question.
seen it in Europe, or like I haven't
I'm
read
assuming
anything
right.
about it in Europe.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
I don't know. That is a good question.
Yeah, just curious about that. If it's like something, we uniquely do. I've never been at anything like that either.
I mean, I'm sure there's weird people that create weird things all over the world,
True.
but whether
Or like roadside specifically,
one interesting thing in America is that it's such a huge country, right? Like
True.
I'm not like compared to other countries, we are very large and vast. And most of the ways to get around this country, if you can't afford airplanes, you drive around. And so there's all these miles and miles of road where there's nothing but farmland and trees and forest and desert and plains.
And the largest ball of yarn.
And if you just pluck down you want to build the largest ball of yarn in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, you may get some people to stop by because it's a long road and somebody might, just need a break to stretch their legs. It's interesting.
I also think it's like,
Hey there!
there it is,
Hey
like
there!
where this book is a road trip, essentially.
It's like
Or a
mostly
lot of it.
travelogue, yeah.
Yeah. Which is really cool and like also very
Buddy?
American.
Buddy?
So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I never really gave too much thought to roadside attractions until this book. Which is awesome. What is the cultural significance of the more spiritual old gods and the more material technological new gods? I only think it's going to get worse as the years go by.
That wasn't the first question, though.
The first discussion question was roadside attractions. How does he manage to combine a fantastical world of gods and out of this world events? How do you think that relates to like old gods wanting to use the older attractions?
Well, so the question. Hold on. But the question is like, how does the author manage to combine the world of the fanciful world of gods and out of this world events with a world of rundown roadside attractions and quaint small towns? Like, how does he? How does it tie those concepts together? Because I think
It's very odd to combine those two, but it like the world is so believable, which I thought was like a quite a big feat.
I thought it makes sense where the old gods are choosing these attractions because, like them, it's their, I don't want to say they're obsolete, but like they're from, what was it, DeGrango who said they're from like a bygone era?
Yeah.
The gods are from a bygone era. These attractions can be.
I think the interesting part about like the quaint towns and such is, there are a lot of beliefs and belief systems in the world, and there are a lot of immigrants in America. And as immigrants move to America, they typically congregate in areas together. So you end up like these little German sections within some states, and these little you end up with these communities from these different parts of the world, and they bring their belief systems with them. So they make these like little areas that are not typically, necessarily major cities, where this god from their home country will have like a place of belief, a place of power. And we saw that with Chernobog specifically, right? He said, that a lot of people died in this area, so he went there and sort of like refreshed his power just by visiting this old farm where he had a lot of like belief power before. And I think
Like so much blood was spilt on the land.
Mm-hmm. And I think the interesting part of that is new gods and are tied to technology and media. And we think of when I think of those things, I think of major metropolitan areas. Right? You don't see like the Today Show and the background is a farm. No, it's like New York Times Square, right? Like they associate these newer gods and technologies with these places. So to me, it makes total sense for a contrast that these old gods are more in the rural areas where their beliefs still hold some degree of power.
It's
Yeah.
true, and they remind us of like historical and cultural origins of those people too. Yeah, so the old gods too.
So you're saying like the new gods are born out of metropolitan areas and the old gods exist in more rural areas. They're maintained in more rural area. Okay.
Yeah, which makes sense when you think about that small town in Wisconsin, right? Where what was his name? Heisman or
Hinzelman.
Hinzelman, right? Like he maintains his worship of Odin in that small town, like in that sort of.
And he can,
right?
Because it's so small. Like,
and he can. And I did want to go back to that at some point, but it shows that Odin picked that town not because it's a quaint, quiet place where. Not just because it's a quaint place where shadow can disappear, but it's also a place where Odin has power and the ability to sort of hide and protect shadow.
Yeah. Great. Totally agree.
I mean, I liked that town until I figured out what was happening.
I definitely... There's some interesting parts about that town, and I did enjoy the recurring character, that young girl. I don't know how young she was, but that like Shadow kept interacting with. Yeah, Sam. I liked how she kept popping in and out here and there because it seemed like her fate and Shadow's were sort of like tied together for a little while there, and I thought that was just very interesting because she totally could have just been this throwaway character that was a hitchhiker at one point, but the author sought to like sort of make her appear a couple times, and I thought that was cool.
She has that amazing monologue, right? About when he's like, you won't believe what's happening. And she's like, I'll believe anything. And there's like a page of her monologuing about, and that was like super good. I loved that monologue.
Yeah. It's like she was supposed to, or she is supposed to be that character, that very fluid character of belief, I guess. That shows like you can believe this while also believing that, even though they contradict. Like, it's okay. You don't have to be 100% one way or the other. So she's inserted there to like, I feel, remind us that like it's okay. You don't have to be 100% black or white. And yeah, her monologue was like insane.
I think it also had a tone of like belief is waning and can change and can be to some nonsensical and to some it can run their whole life. And
yes,
it could be anything and everything and nothing all at one time. Belief as a human concept is like liquid and flowing, and you never it sometimes won't make sense where it lands. And I thought that was really, that's what I got out of it.
It can be, yeah, it can, where it makes sense to me, maybe my belief doesn't make sense to you. And that's okay.
That's okay.
I like how I almost feel like Sam represents belief itself.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
feel like
She's
too,
such a good
also,
character
like a grounded human perspective too.
versus like a god's.
Yeah, like versus a
I'll
god.
I'll probably just read that monologue at the end to sort of close out the book club.
Belief
that's a good
idea.
is like innately human, you know, like that's one of the things that took us to the top of the food chain as, you know, Homo sapiens, is like we could get other people to believe things that were not tangible. You know, we could come together as a community and start to tell stories that is uniquely human. So I agree with that, Kiki.
I think too, the Buffalo Man character pops in with something like to reinforce to Shadow the importance of humans versus the importance of gods, and how we should care more about the humans as gods instead of using them so selfishly, like how Odin and Loki have been to put on this whole ruse. Because it's not about the people, it's about getting the people to sacrifice themselves to them.
Well, one
Which I
doesn't
thought-
exist without the other. Like the whole concept of the book is that gods don't exist unless
Without the
humans
believe.
in them.
True.
You know, they created them to believe in, just like technology and the new gods. Like that's the allegory.
Yeah, I struggled a bit with Odin's master plan behind everything, because if like the whole like thing felt like a gimmick, like when you hear Mr. World say, "I'm gonna throw a spear from the World Tree over the battle and say, I dedicate this, you know, this battle to Odin," is like, I was like, but that's not people. Like that's not you're the whole book is about people's belief, you know, being what powers them, being what powers this whole system. Odin's like, well, I'm just gonna arrange for a bunch of gods to die and then claim it was for me. Like,
Feed off
okay.
of their
Yeah, so you're gonna kill off a bunch of gods, and like, so that was less about the power of belief and more about him sacrificing other gods to extend his own life.
He just
Like,
doesn't care, you know, like
well, he's a god.
he
of
cares
war.
about his survival, yeah, and that's about it.
Yeah, I did.
Which, yeah,
I liked how I also enjoyed Shadow's like relation to Odin and how that like, came about, along with like all these people that like were near Shadow. Like Loki was in prison with Shadow, and it was
his
like,
cellmate.
It was
Yeah.
obvious right there in front of us the whole time. The name is very clear, but like I didn't catch it. I did not catch that Loki Lysmith is Loki.
It's
Really?
like it's
Really?
almost kind of like a duh moment when I got, because
Low-key.
it's not
It's
spelled
like the
same.
most
Oh.
lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's
did
funny.
not catch it. I was like, what the heck? Just like his name's Shadow. Like the names of things didn't like from the very beginning. The names just felt very weird to me. Like
Shadow's
okay.
name is such a, it can throw you off because like the son of Odin is Baldur, and Baldur is not a shadow, he's light, or right? Or
Well,
he's not a shadow. I thought he was more, I don't know too much about Greek mythology or Norse god, sorry.
a lot
Norse
of this comes
mythology.
from what you're describing though are gods who are children of other gods, right? So, like, when you're talking about that, Shadow is half of a god. Like his mom was a human, right? So there's definitely something different there in terms of like, I wouldn't try to associate him to Balder just because of the name. And I don't remember if Balder's
He
the son
is
here.
Balder.
He is Balder?
He is Balder. Yes.
I did not catch that.
Mm-hmm.
I had to research that one, but
And the interesting thing about Wednesday too is when our name for Wednesday comes from Odin. It originally was Odin's Day, and through translation it became Wednesday. So if you know, then you say Mr. Wednesday, God. Okay, that's probably, but it's really smart.
That's really interesting. I don't know that.
I was, just to stay on these Norse gods for a minute, I was really sad when he said that, like, what had happened to Thor. Like, Thor had committed suicide, like, back in the 70s or something. I was like, damn.
Yeah, that was intense. That was crazy.
It was like, if dude had stuck around to the 2000s, he would have got a huge, fucking buff from the Avengers.
So,
He'd be
I was
fine.
also thinking regarding the shadow thing is in popular culture, Thor is way more known as a son of Odin than Balder.
Correct.
And so that is the shadow. He lives in the shadow of his father and his brother.
That makes sense. Because Thor is like one of the most well-known, I feel like, too, out of all.
Yeah.
That's
So I
amazing.
think that's what the shadow means. The name.
Didn't think about that.
What's
Love
the
it.
next
Thank you.
question?
What is the cultural significance of the more spiritual old gods and the more material technological new gods? Which I think we've touched on.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
How have Americans transferred their devotion from the old to the new, and are there consequences? Yes. All the above.
How, I would say a lot of it has to do with, like, technology has usurped a lot of family values. You saw it back in the 80s and such with, like, latchkey kids whose both parents had to work to make ends meet. That means mom and dad aren't always there at home, for family mealtime, and kids are being babysit by technology, right? Which becomes the god that they worship. And so it's a natural circumstance of, like, how the lower class in America, like, oftentimes don't have time to work, right? Don't have time not to work. Don't have time to work on those family values as much. And so you end up with these, like, this, family, like, religion and all those things from what your ancestors believed get lost so quickly and easily from one generation to the next.
And it's only, I think, getting worse because now you have kids being raised on iPads and iPhones and constantly, like, it's a constant distraction to help parents cope with, like, oh well, I need time to do X, Y, and Z around the house. I'm gonna throw on the TV or give my kid an iPad while I go work on the stuff that I need to work on. Or, like, we're out at a restaurant and they're being loud and crazy, so I'm gonna put on the iPad and put on a video for them.
Pause.
And I think, like, genuine human. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I think, like, genuine human connectivity and, like, communication just really gets lost there too, which isn't good.
All right, I'm gonna say this real opinionated point here. This is my opinion. It may not reflect other people in this stream. I think there's a huge difference between parents who are overworked and can't be there for their children, and parents who are lazy and just put a device in front of their children. I think there's a both of those contribute to this paradigm shift in the gods, but like I see way too many people jump to like throwing an iPad in front of their kid when like there's so many other options to keep your kids entertained, and it doesn't require $1,000 piece of technology. Like it really doesn't. Like I think that's it. It works, and there's a lot that can be done educationally from an iPad, from technology. They're not the technology itself isn't bad. I think how people lean on it has become bad.
Yeah, how they use it. There's a lot of positive and negative with it. It just depends. There's a lot of fine lines. Yeah.
It can be an amazing. I mean, this is a complete tangent. I don't know. We should get into things and technology.
Yeah. But
I think there's. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to think that's what like technology has become so core and central to our lives that like the waning of the power of old gods and the strengthening of these new technology-based gods makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was really interesting, an interesting choice to minimize the gods that are most prevalent today that are old gods, such as the Christian God, such as Allah, like because as what?
No, keep going.
What you're saying reminds me of when we learned about Easter. And then when Odin was like, Easter, they're not worshiping you in the way that you think. And then we went into like asking people on the street, well, like how do you celebrate Easter? And they're like, oh, with eggs and bunnies and stuff like that. When the true story and belief of Easter is very different than that. So I also thought that was interesting because like the beliefs are waning and nobody like essentially like I don't know why I celebrate Easter. I just do because everybody dyes eggs and does egg hunts and stuff like that. Why am I like blanking on words? Yeah, just
there's
Easter
something
egg.
else to it. There's something else to that's interesting because Easter is tied in Christian faith is tied to resurrection, and like there's that whole theme that happens in the book, and so I think there's something there that I don't have the words for, where like Easter was not originally part of Christianity, but Christianity like took it and pulled it in, and now Easter probably still exists because of Christianity, despite the fact that was not her origin, right? And I thought that was a really interesting hook, to not have Christianity as a god in the book, but to have these like parts that we know of as Christianity, even though that's not what they're from.
That's why like when it was like being revealed who Shadow was, I was like, Jesus. He's Jesus, right?
So
and
that's what I was
going
to say earlier, is like he clearly is not Jesus Christ, but the Christian the biblical Jesus is nowhere near an original story. Like that, the concept of crucifixion, death, and resurrection is in so many different ancient religions, and is echoed in Baldur, So is he Jesus? No, but I think that points to the repetition of those stories that get repeated in different cultures.
Yeah, I guess I don't know why I didn't think of like, oh yeah, like there's not just one. I mean, there is just one Jesus, but like the idea of it isn't
Hmm.
like a foreign concept or a new, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, like with the themes of like suffering and redemption and resurrection, there are kind of like the similarities between those two.
So
What?
the thing I
Of
was
like
going to say
Shadow and Jesus.
the thing I was going to say earlier is there's a interesting shift, regarding the question between religious gods. The old gods tend to be tied to a belief system in something untangible, in something that's ethereal, like a need to feel comfort that there's something out there greater than me. And this is echoed in Christianity, this is echoed in all religions that continue today, is that it is a way to feel comfort in knowing that I don't have complete control. There's something else out there that's watching and taking care. Where the new gods are tangible: my phone, my computer, the internet, my TV. You know what I mean? So, like, I thought that was a really interesting thing.
Mm-hmm. To that
I didn't even
end-
think about that.
To that end, it also shows a lack of permanence for the new gods, right? Like,
Yes.
because those pieces of technology can disappear just as quickly as they appear. And so
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting how they like alluded to the god of iron having already like come and gone. We know that iron was a huge part of American history and railroads and all sorts of manufacturing, and probably was worshipped to some degree. But these days we don't
Oil.
think about iron.
Yeah. Same, yeah, great point. Yep. There are a lot of things through, and same thing with the old gods. There was a time when, the Egyptian gods, the Norse gods were like, when there will never be a time where people don't believe in us. Like, we are at the top of our game. Everybody in our culture believes in us. There's not even a waning. There's not even anything like that. And now, boom. And now fast forward and they're gone, So we might think that like technology might not, might never go away, but maybe it will, maybe there will be a time when the technology gods, are the old gods and we have American gods too.
No, I don't want the technology to go away. I like the technology. I'm technical boy. No, I'm not.
Hey, mister. Hey, mister.
98.
Ugh.
The age of strife will be a
Strife.
reality. Also, Raven says she's a practicing pagan, and that this is really awesome to listen to.
Oh yes, and their point about Christian powers that be got good at appropriating pagan holidays, that jumped into my consciousness as a teenager when I read the Da Vinci Code. They go into that really kind of lightly, and I did some research and found out that like a lot of the Christian holidays, Christmas, Easter, all this stuff, like they come from roots that have nothing to do with Jesus.
That's
and
true.
and that, so it's very fascinating.
I haven't read the book, but I watched the movie.
The book is so good.
I would say
bet.
I still
Probably
have a
better
soft
than
spot for
movie,
the
I
book.
assume.
The movie trash. The book absolutely fantastic.
I'll have to read it then.
Tom
Um,
Hanks's haircut leaves a lot to be desired.
Mhm. The book was really good. I did not like the movie.
Yeah. Good to know. I'll
Next
probably read the
question.
book more.
What
10.
about the book can be read as satire or critique of American life, being that Gaiman is English and he did not live in America at the time of its writing? I know he did research and he did come to America and do a road trip.
Yeah, which was
Oh, cool.
really cool because
Like
he
he
didn't
went
want. Yeah,
he went to the locations that he was writing about.
Yeah, he traveled the path of Shadow and Mr. Wednesday, which I thought was really nice and really interesting. However, he is still a visitor, you know. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about what he may be critiquing about America and its American gods from the perspective of a foreigner. Not that England and America are terribly different, but
They're not, but I will point out that a lot of Europeans specifically continue to view America as a very young and immature nation. And I think that's shown very clearly in the new gods that are depicted.
mm-hmm.
They're young, they're immature, they're brash.
Yes.
They act oftentimes without like maybe necessarily thinking through all the consequences, like because they think that they're invincible, which is very much probably a commentary on America.
Yeah,
Sure.
I that's
I agree.
kind of the one thing that popped out to me too. I don't know that he's like talking shit or like
No,
that
no,
they're
no,
a
no, no.
lot,
No.
but that certainly is one of like putting a mirror up to us as an American and going like, you know, if you read into that, you're like, oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he just really like invites readers to reflect on like the values and beliefs that shape American society the most. So.
It's also cool to get like this perspective on American roadside attractions.
Sure.
Which makes
Like we
sense.
said,
Yeah, it makes
like we
sense. It's not
Yeah.
on his radar as somebody who's not from America.
And
Yeah.
like you said, I never really thought about the roadside stuff very much until
Yeah, and as a foreigner taking the road trip along the path that you want your protagonist to go, you know, I don't know whether he had the roadside attraction idea before or after, but maybe he was taking that trip and then came across all these roadside attractions and came to that realization, which could be that's a really fun idea to think of. So
Yeah, it's really cool. I thought it was so interesting reading like how he wrote this book essentially. And he took the time to actually like come here and walk the path, walk Shadow's path.
Yeah.
Because I do think a
Respectable.
lot of authors would just like phone it in.
Mhm.
And that probably would have brought like a very different perspective, yeah, if he hadn't like been in America at all and like experienced it for himself. Probably could have been like a very different book.
He's
There probably would be no roadside attraction.
Yeah, that too.
so Neil Gaiman, big author, well-known name, right? Was he? This wasn't the book that made him like super popular, though, right? Like he's done other big books, right?
Well, this brought him into mainstream consciousness. I think if you were into literature, you knew who Neil Gaiman was, but with the TV show, people went back. But I mean, Coraline is quite big, and you know that. So people I think were conscious of him in certain
Oh, he was the author of
aspects.
Coraline.
Mhm.
I didn't realize that. I read that. Okay, so I have
I
read
would
like
say
his
that
other
this
books.
unequivocally shot him into mainstream consciousness. Though.
Fair.
Well, and now he has what, Sandman?
Sandman, the graphic novel, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
He also
he's
worked with Terry Pratchett quite a bit with Good Omens.
Oh.
Yeah, which is
He's doing good stuff.
Yeah. Did he have a part in Don't Panic with Douglas Adams? Yeah, I think he did.
I think he did.
Yeah. Good Omens, obviously. Yeah. So I was just curious, like, authors aren't typically known for being like super rich people unless they make it big, right? So if he'd had a previously successful something, then like his trip to America could have been probably pretty nice and whatever. But if he actually came over with like not a lot of money and he was, you know, doing this sort of like self-guided tour of America, I think that might actually be more authentic of an experience as opposed to like a paid, trip across America.
A sponsored trip
Yeah,
by like
I think he
something.
made a good living for himself before, but
That's what I'm asking. Yeah, like how
Yeah.
much of this was like, because at the very end he talks about staying in a lot of people's houses while writing, and it's an interesting piece.
yeah.
That's another like I don't want to say like quintessential American thing, but like couch surfing across America, hitchhiking used to be a lot bigger, popular. Uh, and now like, I don't want to get murdered, so don't want to do that anymore. But I like how like Sam was our hitchhiker. So I thought that was nice that he included that too. Is Shadow a compelling protagonist? What are his most appealing qualities? And what's the significance of his coin tricks? The coin tricks, I don't know.
First question answer, no. That's one of my major problems with the book is that I
Did-
think Shadow is
Did you find him boring? Or
I found him unimaginably sad and therefore hard to connect with. And uh-huh.
like a very blank slate?
His reactions to things are very like, oh, wow. Like he comes across these crazy things, and I found his tragic backstory hard to put myself in, and his reactions to things seemed a little underwhelming to me. So I think he's one of my problems with the book is that he's not what I enjoy about a protagonist. However, I think he services the story well enough.
He's just very unenthusiastic.
I think this. I don't know. I don't feel like protagonist is the right word. Maybe it is, but he seems more like this like reluctant sidekick in the book. Like yes, he's a central figure, and we start and end with him, but he's really just along for the ride. Like he very much, when does he really choose to do anything? Like he gets dragged through everything.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's not a protagonist. It's from most of his point of view. He has his relationship with Laura. He's the dreams. He's the central figure of the narrative. He might not move the narrative along, but I think
that's why he's disengaging. Like why it's so easy to like why he's not more engaging, because he doesn't do anything. Everything happens to him. And I think
For sure.
that's the part that I don't like. He doesn't really, besides the part at the end with the car and the kids and that part, he takes action. But the rest of it just happens to him.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So I agree. I don't think he makes a very very engaging protagonist.
I also agree. I mean, he protagonists usually go through some growth and all kinds of other stuff throughout stories, which he does. But yeah, he's not
absolutely. That's the thing is he absolutely has a story arc. He is not the same person at the beginning than he is at the end, which is great. That's what you want from a protagonist. But everything else, it wasn't my favorite. That's all. I don't really even think it's that bad. It just wasn't he wasn't my favorite part of the book by any means.
I kept waiting on him to exhibit some power beyond the weather control. I kept waiting on something.
Yeah.
And it just never happened.
I think that's part of him being Balder. I think and that's where I think his character is the story fairly well, is that he embodies what I know about Balder, and it's very reserved and sad.
Lackluster.
Yeah, So like I get it, but
I don't like it.
So
I don't like it.
let me ask this question: that now that I know he's Balder, because I didn't, I said earlier I didn't catch that in the book. Is he a reincarnation of Balder? Like,
Well, no, he's the same way that like Odin is, where he or Mr. Wednesday, where he's the physical embodiment of him.
Okay. Okay.
I think there's honestly a lot to break down with him as a character that I think is left ambiguous, which I also don't really like. I would have liked a little more clear answers about him, but yeah.
So, what are his most appealing qualities?
His ability to just roll with it.
Yeah, he is very unflappable.
Loyal?
Yeah,
maybe?
loyalty, 100%.
Curiosity
Yeah.
and intelligence, I think, too, because he's willing to question the world around him a lot.
I think he has a very good sense of morals. Like,
True.
he he doesn't stop Wednesday from robbing a bunch of people, but he does at that one point when like Wednesday like shortchanges a girl. He's like he pulls out some money and gives the girl money. Like he sees points where he's like, that's too far.
I loved that scene, and I almost put a question about that because I love what Mr. Wednesday says there, where like
He breaks down her life.
He's like, they shortchanged me, so why can't I shortchange them? Isn't it fair? They fucked me. You know, they don't believe in me anymore. And I thought that his little diatribe there was very interesting. And I don't know whether like he's kind of right, but you know,
he's out of line even if he's right.
But his logic is kind of sound. I don't, so like I don't know. I thought it was an interesting thing for Gaiman to put in there.
It was, and so I think it's the dead kids in the confrontation with Heinzman. He tries to like make friends with his neighbors in that small town. He when the sheriff comes to like he's like we gotta do this the hard way or whatever, and he's like I don't want to do that. Like he's a convicted criminal, but he never like he was in jail because of his wife, because the whole thing was like she essentially like he went to jail to protect her. Like there's all this. His moral compass is really good, and I think that's what I like about him beyond anything else.
That's fair.
What is the significance of his coin tricks?
Any idea?
Does it have
I don't
stuff
know.
to do? Oh, I was like, is this a quiz, Aaron? Are you testing us right now?
No, but like clearly, I think it might be some gap in knowledge about Balder, some Norse where like you get it if you get it, and I just don't. So I don't know.
I mean, it could also just be something as simple as like sleight of hand deception. Like we're all being
which is kind of the theme
duped.
of Odin.
Yeah.
You know.
I was gonna say too, I think like coin tricks are like usually like a form of like illusion and like transformation deception. So and Shadow's life is filled with a lot of illusions from his past. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts I had about that.
And it's, I guess it also like the illusion of gods.
True.
The isn't there a part where he learned the trick from Mad Sweeney, the leprechaun, or is it Wednesday where he was like, if you believe you can grab the coin from out of nowhere or something, like you will do it. Like if you believe hard enough is like the message that I was getting from where he was like, if you can picture it in your mind and you believe it, you can grab that coin and produce it out of nowhere.
Okay, so some thoughts on Reddit are he had to realize there was real magic and it wasn't all just sleight of hand,
Yeah.
and that it foreshadows his connection to the trickster gods. If there may be some significance to the situation that they appear in. So, you know, I think those are pretty fair. That's better the guess than I had.
I
But
just it's hard.
it does relate to the trickster. Sorry, G. What were you gonna say?
There's also, I want to point out the two special coins.
The silver Liberty dollar and the gold coin he got
Yes.
from Mad Sweeney. Yes.
The gold
The
coin
sun
from the
and the
leprechaun.
moon. No?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And the how does I say that? The gold coin that Shadow takes from the treasure of the sun is supposed to belong only to the King of America, marking Shadow as an American royalty because he is able to take it from the sun's hoard, as well as connecting Shadow to his true nature as the sun god of Balder. In Norse mythology, the coin literally represents new life. It has the power to grant Laura a chance at life even after she dies, reanimating her corpse. Thus, the gold coin protects Shadow indirectly, channeling his own power as a sun god through Laura as Laura fights to keep Shadow safe.
Where are you reading that from?
This is from litcharts.com.
Interesting. Okay.
The silver coin itself, bearing the American symbol of liberty in the face of the Statue of Liberty, in some sense offers Shadow freedom from death. As long as Shadow has the silver coin, he is protected from death by the new gods. When Shadow chooses to die as a sacrifice for Odin, the silver coin becomes the moon and lights Shadow's way through the underworld. Thus, the silver coin gives Shadow freedom again once he dies and is reborn, knowing his full identity as Odin's son. Shadow is then able to use his power as the sun god completely, plucking another gold coin from the sun's hoard at the end of the novel, once Shadow is free from all the manipulations of the other gods. More than the life-giving and protective powers of the coins themselves, the coins also represent Shadow's affinity for both the old gods and the new gods. The gold coin ties Shadow to the traditional sun god mythos, but it also shows his essential American nature by naming him the King of America. The silver coin is given to the Shadow by Zoria Polonchonaya,
Nice try.
an old Slavic goddess of the moon and the night, showing that Shadow is blessed by the old gods, even as it guides him through the underworld, where he becomes a new god born of America itself. The coins thus show Shadow's identity both as a reincarnation of an established god and a completely new god in his own right. As Shadow taps into the magic power of these coins, he blends both of these roles and reinvents what gods can do in America and the American psyche.
Love it. Cool.
I was like, God, I hope he's not going to be a magician.
But he's one thing I also read. I don't know if this is on Reddit or whatever. One of Baldur's like genuine qualities is that he's liked. He's not disliked. He is liked as you know as a god, and it's really endearing to me how he uses the magic coin tricks to endear himself to like children and other people throughout the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Same.
Why does the Buffalo Man tell Shadow to believe everything? And what role do dreams play in the narrative?
I think we learned very early on that not only does belief power the gods themselves, but through belief they can enact, things. he makes it snow by believing and thinking about snow, right?
Like belief is the fuel.
Right. Belief is the fuel and the power.
True.
If he couldn't picture snow, it wouldn't have happened, right? It's a very core part of that section of the book. And his partial godhood at that point is probably why he got such a bad headache from it too, because like he was using a power that he's never used before, right? But I think that is like the first inkling I had in the book that belief was sort of like the central theme of the whole thing.
Okay. I think he meant singular belief is more harmful. Usually, when people believe in fewer things, they believe them harder and they push them to
Fair.
spread them. And the concept to believe in everything keeps you uh from that pressure to believe in that one thing and push
Mm-hmm.
others and become preachy and whatnot. So believe everything, I
I
think, is a yeah.
stand behind
And
that.
then
I can
importance
totally
of
stand behind
being open-minded too.
Yeah, be open-minded, sure.
Mhm.
that. But it also keeps
Okay.
him from like I think the buffalo is guiding him away from like being beholden to Odin, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
don't just
True.
believe in Odin, believe in everything.
Yeah, good point. Yep.
Like because at any point in there, like Odin could have been like, sorry, I'm actually your dad, and he could have like made that connection. But he chose not to, right? Because that could have opened up other problems. And I think like
Mm-hmm.
by Odin not forcing that connection, the buffalo also reinforced like, you know, there's a lot to believe in. And it there's no there doesn't seem to be any how do I say this? Negative implications of believing in everything.
Mm-mm.
And and back to Sam's monologue, she believes in everything.
Great point. Great point. Yep. Love that.
Mhm.
Oh, what role do dreams play in the narrative? It's
Uh,
essentially his connection to try to get him to believe in gods, at least in the first portion, I think.
is it like a conduit between him and his true self, like as Balder,
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
To get him to like connect to his roots.
Yeah.
the
Uh,
American dream?
And to like connect you with the
Oh, nice
future of
hook. Nice hook.
Wednesday.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
okay. I think the other side of it is like if you recall when he had that one dream and Wednesday got pissed at him, right?
Uh-huh.
He was
oh,
Mm.
like
because it was like you're telling them where you
yeah,
are.
he essentially like accused, Shadow of like essentially throwing up a damn like signal flare saying where he is. So we could
Mm.
see in that moment
True.
that Shadow had real power in dreams.
Mm.
It was
We didn't.
almost like Wednesday was scared,
I think
which
Wednesday
Again,
was. Yeah, I think Wednesday was scared of it screwing up his plan.
mhm. It feels I'm getting a feeling of something that ties into the mythological Balder. That
Mm,
if you get it, and maybe if you know about it, it makes more sense. That's what
um,
I'm feeling.
I would also say that it goes back to uh, like the whole Balder Shadow doesn't know he's a god. He doesn't know it until like I don't even know like he obviously I think he comes to some realization at the end of the book, because of everything that happens. But even early on, I think he's not fully aware of his own power. And I think dreams are a natural place where many people have, like they think of themselves as more than they normally are. And so I wonder if the dreams are a conduit for like him to actually actualize his true power before he realizes it.
Nice. I think that's poetic.
Mhm.
Late in the novel, the narrator says religions are, by definition, metaphors. Religions are places to stand and look and act, vantage points from which to view the world. Would you agree with this assertion?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many religion has been used but for so many different purposes in the world, both good and bad. And it's because it can lock people into a viewpoint.
Sure.
If you can believe that there's life after death, that God has a plan for you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like it can give people power. And
It gives people power who tell it, and it's extremely potent as a comfort.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about earlier, it makes people feel relief to that big question of like what happens. It's like the biggest question ever. What happens when we die?
Sure.
Oh, I have the answer to it.
Right.
Here's what it is.
Sure. And people don't like unknowns, so having like that, that comfort.
Having this nice little like, here's a perspective that can just guide you through the rest of your life is a very comforting thing to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would also say, like, what are the next question was like, what are the gods and American gods metaphors for? I would want to pause there because religions and gods aren't necessarily the same thing. The phrasing is religions are by definition metaphors. Religions are places to stand and look and act, vantage points from which to view the world. But I think the American gods aren't religions. There's no framework there really for things. They are simply present, and that gives them power. The technology is present. That's why technology is everywhere. That's why Techno Boy has so much power when he has Wi-Fi coverage. And media will always have power as long as we have media. Like that is a thing. And so she is well rooted in modern technology. But like, what other modern gods are there?
Okay.
Drugs.
So my thought process was old god. I personally think gods are tied to religion, and that the old gods were an answer to what happens when you die, because we were less distracted. We had more time to ponder such things. And the new gods of technology replace that need for an answer with a distraction. We are now distracted from even asking that question. So they both kind of have the same end in making people feel comfortable.
I agree. And like some other aspects too with new gods, like instant gratification and stuff like that too comes to mind.
Oh my God, don't tell me TikTok is a god.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what? It could be. It definitely is.
Absolutely.
TikTok's a god. Facebook's a god. Instagram.
But they're sub gods of internet god, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Because Facebook has become such a thing that it's like,
Thanks for the raid. The underscore and underscore is underscore nine underscore is and welcome you three lovely people. And welcome you three lovely people.
We just get rated by the underscore.
The underscore.
The end is nigh.
The end is nigh.
I love it. I love it. Welcome in, Nye. Hope you're doing well.
Hey there!
The underscore.
Hey there!
I need to go back and clip that. That was too good.
That's funny.
That was good.
So, yes and no to what?
Okay. I got distracted.
He doesn't want to believe that he's worshiping a TikTok god.
No, not that. Not that. What I was going to say is that I think Facebook, if we're talking about this pantheon of American gods, and the internet is, by all intents and purposes, a god at this point, for sure. And maybe he's called the cloud, but to some people or whatever the fuck, right? But Facebook has taken on such a presence within the internet that to some people, the internet doesn't exist. They just have Facebook, right? And so while I think Facebook would owe some sort of like power to the internet, if the Cisco backbone goes down, aka the internet's bloodlines goes down, Facebook's going to go down, right? But the real power there is in the belief system. And so I think, what used to be the AOL god back in the late 90s has morphed into the Facebook god of today, right? And I think there's like the Facebook god is mostly made up of crunchy moms and old people yelling
Karens.
about whatever, right?
Crunchy
And then
moms.
like I picture the TikTok god is like very trendy people who have like light up shoes and dance a lot. Like,
I mean, if we're honest with each other, Facebook's fighting with Odin as an old god.
fuck yeah, dude.
That's
Yeah.
why,
Facebook's
like,
dead.
I think it's such a great and powerful part of the book when Techno Boy is alone, powerless in this motel room. And he is so helpless that he goes to seek comfort in Shadow, like essentially his enemy. Like, how desperate is he?
Well,
It's pretty bad.
there's something to that,
It's pretty
right?
bad.
There's something to that because is it like I think Techno Boy sees the old gods as beneath him. He just sees them as completely beneath him, and he's so shitty to them, right?
Yeah, I imagine he's the one who's like, oh, boomers, you know?
Oh yeah, he invented that
boomers.
word. He
Boomers
fucking
drool.
invented fucking
Yeah,
Techno Boy
boomers
invented the word
drool.
boomer, right? I think he went to Shadow to like pick a fight, to like entertain himself, to do something, and like
Oh,
Shadow
that
completely was
just
like
sparked.
unresponsive to him, right? He was like completely like whatever the fuck. Like he was typical Shadow, and I
I'm
think it
so glad
completely
you
took the
said
wind
that.
out of his sails.
Well, because like, what is a constant on the internet? Trolling.
Trolling.
Sure.
That
He
is
was
so
trying to troll
true.
Shadow. He's trying to
He
troll
was trying
Shadow.
to troll Shadow, and it failed because Shadow didn't fuck. Shadow's
Shadow
he's
is
like whatever.
uncontrollable.
He's like, what the fuck ever, dude? You got a problem? Are you okay?
He's so unbothered.
And when
He
that
would get-
failed, he's like just started treating. He sort of like started confiding in him, which is so interesting.
Sure. Fair point.
Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Shadow would get rickrolled and then be like, "This is what I wanted to watch, anyways."
God,
I was already.
you're making me
I already
want to
put this
be
in my
Shadow.
Google search.
Thanks. I wish I was that unflappable.
Exactly.
Oh my
Like,
god.
oh, yeah, okay. Rick Astley.
Sure.
This song this got a nice song.
Good
I like
guy.
this.
Good guy.
They're like, haha, got you. And he's like, what? Oh,
What?
okay. I guess you got me.
Never gonna give you.
He'd
He's
start doing the
uncontrollable.
dance.
He starts singing along.
Yeah. Never gonna get you.
Oh my
Raven
god.
says, Raven has said a couple things that I wanted to touch back on. She said, Morpheus, we were talking about dreams. Morpheus will often show you your subconscious. It brings what you buried to the forefront. So that's also part of why like Shadow has power in dreams, because he's like it brings his power to the forefront, I think, as well. She says, throughout history, to explain the unexplainable, when mankind, this is when we were talking about religions and viewpoints, unexplainable, when mankind has questions that they don't know the answers to, they make sense of it through supernatural belief in beings more powerful than ourselves. No one wants to not have a way to change the present, the world, through prayer, ritual, etc. That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, there are atheists, there are agnostics, there is a spectrum. But yeah, when you're talking about the reason behind religion and why it's so potent, that is why. Yeah.
She also, I want to add this part at the end. She said, just to stir the pot, Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. Take a quick look at the lyrics. It's so appropriate to this discussion.
Oh, very good. Yes, yes, yes.
What a great song.
I'm a big Garfunkel head.
What are your favorite secondary characters, human or divine?
I really liked Laura.
Mm-hmm.
I think from the shadows, protecting, like, she is not a god, but she has been empowered by a gift from a god. The golden coin has given her, like, it brought her back from the dead and gave her the power to protect him. Like, that was huge. And she's still innately human. She still says shit that, brings up the past and hurts Shadow's, like, feelings. But she doesn't do it out of spite. She just has lost her sense of self in a lot of ways. And I think there's some real interesting tie-ins there. And I really enjoyed the whole part at the end where like she's like, "Oh, do you want to know what happened to so and so and so and so?" He's like, "Yeah," and the book says, and then she showed him. I was like, "God damn, that's like a 5-word sentence that just ended a dude."
Mm-hmm. I hate her.
You hate her?
All right, go into that first before I talk.
I love her. I think she is one of my favorite characters, but she's a cheating bitch. She's so mean, and yet still loves him. I think what's interesting is that she has somewhat justifications uh for what she did. For the same reasons that we kind of don't like him. She didn't like him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Does that mean you should cheat on him? Does that mean you kind of deserve to get in a car crash for giving a dude head? Like, fuck off. She's mean. She's a cheating bitch, but damn, she's an interesting character.
I want to throw this out there. Her unfaithfulness got her killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yep.
Deserved.
Very true.
Hi,
Cheaters.
Craig.
And like I said, the disturbed cover of that song is really good.
I really liked the full loop of it. How at the very end, she was like, she asked him, did he have a way to, like, bring her back? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, and the other way, the other way out of this. And he's like, you won't like it. And she, like, she essentially insists that he end it. And I think it's that tiny little bit, like, there's almost like a tiny piece of redemption for her at the end. She accepts her fate.
Yeah.
She finally wants to die at the end, where she didn't want to before.
Listen, everybody, just get a divorce. Don't cheat. You might die.
You might die.
Could. Chances are slim.
Chances are slim.
But
other
it's never none.
I liked Mr. Nancy too.
Yep.
I felt like he brought a lot of, like, wisdom and humor kind of, like, to it.
I didn't like his story. I was like, this is stupid.
Fair. But, like, just, like, his character in general just, kind of brought a little bit of a lighter tone to it, I felt like.
I also liked I really liked the was it the two mortuary guys.
That's what I
Jekyll
was gonna
and
say.
Yeah.
They're my favorite.
Ibis.
Yep. Yep. Jack
Anubis.
Yep.
Anubis.
And the cat.
Yep. And the
True.
cat.
And
I'm a big Egyptian guy. Anything Egypt, I love. My favorite Assassin's Creed is Origins,
Origins
just
is a
because
good
it's
one.
in Egypt, and so like that's definitely they were my favorite side characters.
Yeah, fair.
You know, like there's a lot of good characters. I really who yeah, Bast. Yep. And who the the American Indian guy. Like I don't remember
Whiskey Jack.
Whiskey Jack. I liked Whiskey Jack. I thought he was an interesting sort of like part of it. He's obviously a very much a caricature of a stereotype, but he really, you know, I think he sounds so. He seems so upset when his like quote unquote nephew died, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real low point. Like, cause like he was like, oh, I didn't know he was a poet. He's like best damn poet in America. Like, you know, like there's sadness to him that gave him depth.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I agree. I like Sam too, but we kind of touched on her already a little bit.
A lot of good side characters, I'd say.
Yeah, the book is full of them. Oh, and the Chernobog. I loved the character arc of Chernobog. Like the way it ended, I saw it coming. But
there was one line he had that I really liked. I'm never gonna be able to find it.
Well, his god was like, or his representation is of a Slavic god who is, I guess, kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde for the seasons, and so like he's really nasty and evil one half of the year, and then he's a jolly nice guy for the other half, kind of thing. That's just very basic. So
I almost took him to be like, and I don't know any of the mythology behind Chernobog, but I took him to be almost like a god of the harvest, right? You know,
I should have read more about it, but he's like, you know how he said he was like, oh, I'm part of a twin. He was never part of a twin. It was just his two personalities.
I mean, they look exactly the same. They could be twins. I don't know if that doesn't apply to a god.
So Shadow comes back to, you know, pay his debt and die again. And then Chernobog is now the other twin, and he's like, "Nah, bro, it's fine."
I also love the actor who plays Chernobog in the show. I haven't watched the show, but the actor, I love him. I don't know his name.
Now I'm gonna have to watch this show.
Oh God, Peter Stormare is amazing.
Yeah, he's Chernobog.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that. Maybe I'll watch it. I heard the show kind of sucked towards the end, which makes me not want to watch it. But
yeah.
I probably will now that I know the story. I love Peter.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
I'm trying to find that line by Chernobog, but I gave up. But I know
what is it about?
It's he says fuck like 7 times in it, and it just made me laugh. Where he's like, "I fucking hate you, you fucking fuck, you fucking."
Is it when he's talking about Wednesday?
Yeah, something. It was like it's when they're talking about Wednesday dying and how somebody needs to be a vigil for him or whatever it's called.
Yeah, sit vigil.
But did you? There's a reference to a book, one of the craziest books I've ever read, Gravity's Rainbow. Do you guys remember that mentioned?
No.
No. What part?
There's a part in chapter 16 where it says Shadow wondered what the book was, and he walked around the hospital bed to inspect it more closely. He stood between the bed and the chair, looking from one to the other, the big boy hunched into his chair, his nose buried in gravity's rainbow, trying to escape from his mother's death into London during the Blitz. The fictional madness of the book, no escape and no excuse. Gravity's rainbow is fucking insane, and I am going to recommend it on one of these.
You have a penchant for like insane, not insane books, but like House of Leaves.
Oh yeah.
Which is great. At the end of the novel, Shadow thinks to himself, people believe, people populate the darkness with ghosts, with gods, with electrons, with tails. People imagine and people believe. And it is that belief, that rock solid belief, that makes things happen. Would you agree that's what would you agree that what people believe in are largely projections of their own needs and desires?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
100%.
I think we've touched on that
Yeah, we
quite
have,
Yeah.
honestly.
intensely.
Yeah, we did.
All right, here you go, Aaron.
Yeah.
You heard about Wednesday? Said the driver. His voice sounded different, now older and familiar. He's dead. Yeah, I know, said Shadow. I saw it on TV. Those fuckers, said the white officer. It was the first thing he had said, and his voice was rough and accented, and like the driver's, it was a voice that Shadow knew. I tell you, they are fuckers. Those fuckers.
They're fuckers.
Oh my god.
It was more than that.
That's all that's there on that part. I'm trying to find the next part.
There's one where Chernobog goes off. But yeah, I don't know a lot about Chernobog's mythology. There was a lot I didn't know about it, you know.
That's why I liked the little excerpts of Coming to America that he peppered in.
Oh, so good. Yeah, those little short stories were great.
I wanted more.
Yeah.
It spiced it up with Shadow's lack of enthusiasm
Yeah.
for certain things. It just like kept me going, these little snacks. Which I thought was great. I am go ahead.
Just before we end, because we're going long here, the other things that I didn't like about the book, because we haven't covered a lot of that, we've been really positive about it, and there's not a lot to dislike, but I personally did not like how long the chapters were. It made the pacing feel kind of slow to me. And then the to tease this battle of gods and to resolve it with a conversation and to like blue ball this god confrontation was like, fuck you, man. God damn it. It was I hated. I didn't hate the resolution. I think that it made sense and I get it, but I definitely had
so much more expected.
Exactly. Yeah. So that it's just a little gripe of like you blue balled me a little bit on this battle of the gods. So yeah.
Like
other than that, I really enjoyed everything else.
the most the scene that I liked, like, of one of the deaths is when Technical Boy murders Bellaquis. I thought that was like
runs her over the car.
Yeah, where she realizes like, oh shit, like I'm in trouble, I gotta get out of the car, but then she gets murdered. But I'm like, that was more action packed than the actual battle that we've been led to believe is gonna be huge, like, or something.
It was reminiscent of the last season of Game of Thrones, when the whole series is built upon the long night and then it's one 45-minute episode and then the long night's over and it's like,
yeah,
cool.
What?
That was the shortest night. What do you mean?
That was one night. I'm trying to think what issues I had with the book, which like yeah, the pacing, the hour-long episodes, sorry, I was listening to it. So the hour-long listening sessions was a bit much.
It was definitely a slow burn at the start, but once I got
Yeah.
into it, like I couldn't put it down.
I think that's what happened with me and Three Body Problem. Slow burn, but then just like ate it up.
Raven says, but doesn't that track? Big hype when that is the best way to resolve it. No, big hype. And when that is not the best way to resolve it, it's not necessary. Everyone's tired and wants to go home. Like
I was tired and I wanted to go home.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. It's a good question. It's a good.
I do think I want to give at least like the first episode a go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same.
Well,
see how it is.
We can maybe. Do you want to try to do it on a night?
Do a sesh? Do a Thursday night or a?
Yeah. Well, Thursdays are still taken up by
Twin Peaks is gonna last forever.
Yeah, we still have the new season to watch.
Oh shit, that's right. I forgot.
Do we have any more questions?
I think no, we're wrapping up. Were any other qualms with the book?
Thank you for the 21 long months of subscribing. 21 long months of Twin Peaks never ends. Twin Peaks never ends.
Twin Peaks forever.
I like how it says vape. Hey, Annie, do you want to explain your thing? I think I understand it. I understand it now, I think.
It's the Buffalo Man, essentially. I was trying to find something like with a bison, but embroidery with a bison, I guess, is not a thing. I don't know.
I understand it now after you started drawing like the flowers on the head. I was like, oh, I get what she's doing now.
Thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you for this Prime Gaming sub.
I liked as a foreigner, since Gaiman's English, his incorporation of a lot of the Native American culture as well.
Yeah, same. And I really liked the idea of that small Wisconsin town. Like it sounded like a really cool place
to visit. You should come see Sheboygan sometime. It is it's not small, but
it just made me think a lot of where kind of like where I live. Very small.
There's and like here it's a big thing to like, oh, we go up north to the cabin. So like lakeside, there's a lot of lakesides over here.
Yeah, true. Same over here too.
Raven says there's good wine up there in Michigan.
That's true. Traverse City.
All right.
So overall, I think this was like a very a very well received positive book for this month versus last month, but like last month was spicy and that was great.
Oh yeah. Thanks.
So we'll have to find another
Patrick
spicy
Rothfuss knows how to get me riled up.
And you know that's a talent. That's a talent.
Exactly. I would say it's better to have a visceral, strong reaction than to come away with like,
meh. Yeah.
It didn't really make me feel anything. At least he made me strongly feel something.
Yes.
You said your dad's reading it now?
Kiara's dad.
Okay, Kiara's dad. Okay. Oh, okay.
And he, just like me, really, didn't mind the beginning in the troop. Tarbian is probably my favorite part, and then he gets to the university and he just becomes insufferable. That's where he's at.
Oh, good. Yeah. I wanna find out when he gets to the end of the book where he's at mentally with it.
Same. Yeah. Yep.
All right. I'm gonna wrap up here with the monologue from the book that I really enjoyed. And I'll read the little bit before that. And then she said, very quiet, very fast, If you're going to kill me, please don't hurt me. I shouldn't have come here with you. I'm so dumb. I'm so fucking dumb. I should have run away and called the cops when I first saw you. I can identify you. Jesus, I'm so dumb. Shadow sighed. I never killed anybody. Really. Now I'm going to have to take you to the buck. He said, or if you give the word, I'll turn this car around and take you home. I'll buy you a drink if you're actually old enough to drink, and I'll buy you a soda if you're not. Then I'll take you back to Marguerite, deliver you safe and sound, and hope you aren't going to call the cops. There was silence as they crossed the bridge. Who did kill those men? She asked. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. I would. She sounded angry now. He wondered if bringing the wine to the dinner had been a wise idea. Life was certainly not a Cabernet right now. It's not easy to believe. I, she told him, can believe anything. You have no idea what I can believe. Really? I can believe things that are true, and I can believe things that aren't true. And I can believe things where nobody knows if they're true or not. I can believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and Marilyn Monroe and the Beatles and Elvis and Mr. Ed. Listen, I believe that people are perfectible, that knowledge is infinite, and that the world is run by secret banking cartels and is visited by aliens on a regular basis. Nice ones that look like they wrinkly lemurs and bad ones who mutilate cattle and want our water and our women. I believe that the future sucks, and I believe that the future rocks, and I believe that one day White Buffalo Woman is going to come back and kick everyone's ass. I believe that all men are just overgrown boys with deep problems communicating, and that the decline in good sex in America is coincident with the decline in drive-in movie theaters from state to state. I believe that all politicians are unprincipled crooks, and I believe that they are better than the alternative. And I still believe that they are better than the alternative. I believe that California is going to sink into the sea when the big one comes, while Florida is going to dissolve into madness and alligators and toxic waste. I believe that antibacterial soap is destroying our resistance to dirt and disease so that one day we'll all be wiped out by the common cold like the Martians in the War of the Worlds. I believe that the greatest poets of the last century were Edith Sitwell and Don Marquis, that jade is dried dragon sperm, and that thousands of years ago, in a former life, I was a one-armed Siberian shaman. I believe that mankind's destiny lies in the stars. I believe that candy really did taste better when I was a kid, that it's aerodynamically impossible for a bumblebee to fly, that light is a wave and a particle, that there's a cat in a box somewhere who's alive and dead at the same time. Although, if they don't ever open the box to feed it, it'll eventually just be two different kinds of dead. And that there are stars in the universe billions of years older than the universe itself. I believe in a personal God who cares about me and worries and oversees everything I do. I believe in an impersonal God who sets the universe in motion and went off to hang with her girlfriends and doesn't even know that I'm alive. I believe in an empty and godless universe of casual chaos, background noise, and sheer blind luck. I believe that anyone who says that sex is overrated just hasn't done it properly. I believe that anyone who claims to know what's going on will lie about it, the little things too. I believe in absolute honesty and sensible social lies. I believe in a woman's right to choose, a baby's right to live, that while all human life is sacred, there's nothing wrong with the death penalty if you can trust the legal system implicitly, and that no one but a moron would ever trust the legal system. I believe that life is a game, life is a cruel joke, and that life is what happens when you're alive, and that you might as well lie back and enjoy it. She stopped, out of breath. Shadow almost took his hands off the wheel to applaud. Instead, he said, "Okay, so if I tell you what I've learned, you won't think that I'm a nut?" "Maybe," she said. "Try me."
Amazing.
Yeah,
So
I like
good.
that a lot. So good.
Absolutely my favorite part.
Ditto.
Same.
Bugan Hogan, thanks everybody for being here. Thanks here for coming into the stream and watching us talk about this book that we all really enjoyed. And hope to see you next month when we talk about our next book, which is
Pick the
Undecided.
horror book now, live.
Yeah.
I need to start reading.
And thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Squandy. Thank you.
This was a good one.
This was a great one. And yeah, thank you, Celestia.
This read was so fascinating to me. I really enjoyed learning about the new gods. They were characters that never even crossed my mind, but they were really well crafted and definitely challenged the way that I think about the future. I hope you get a chance to read this one or even watch the show. Come and join us next time as we read a silly, spooky book, Horror Store, by Grady Hendrix.